So last night's Iowa caucus was a major debacle, but I want to focus in on Pete Buttigieg and how he conducted himself in a woefully inappropriate manner. Last night, while every one of the candidates gave a little speech where they tried to spin the results in their favor, it was really only Buttigieg that came out and claimed a victory. It has to be remembered that we had no official results from the Iowa State Democratic Party. No official results in terms of delegates or anything of the sort was released, and yet Buttigieg was trying to claim that he won. If you listen to him this morning as he's giving interviews from New Hampshire, Buttigieg is trying to walk that back a little bit, saying that I didn't say I won Iowa, I was claiming a sort of moral victory, that I did well in many parts of the state, and that a year ago nobody knew who I was, and now I'm competitive in some of the states, so it's a sort of victory in a relative sense. But that's not what Buttigieg sounded like last night. Buttigieg went out on that stage and knowingly tried to steal the narrative result of the Iowa caucus. He tried to steal the narrative victory, knowing that there's no real evidence he was winning. Now you might say, well, given that we don't have any official results, it's not necessarily clear who's winning, and so maybe he does have a claim to victory. But what we do have is detailed results from both Buttigieg's campaign and Bernie Sanders' campaign. And what that shows is likely that Bernie Sanders is winning. And that if anything, Bernie Sanders is the one that can claim victory last night. But because Bernie Sanders isn't inappropriate, he didn't try to claim a victory that was unsubstantiated. And if we look at the numbers, Bernie Sanders has data from 40% of all the precincts, and Buttigieg from about 75% of all the precincts. And both of them give nearly identical numbers for Pete Buttigieg's support after delegate reallocation. And so that shows more likely than not that Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders in both of their data sets did about the same, which tells me that while Buttigieg isn't releasing his numbers for the other candidates, at least thus far, while Bernie Sanders has, he released his numbers not just for himself, but from his competitors, that Bernie Sanders is likely leading in Pete's even larger, more comprehensive data set. That tells me that Bernie Sanders ended up beating Pete Buttigieg by a few percent, likely winning more delegates than Buttigieg as well. And that doesn't mean guaranteed that Bernie Sanders won last night, but it means that the most significant evidence we have indicates that Bernie Sanders is likely the winner from Iowa. And so if anybody was going to get on stage last night and try to steal the narrative victory despite results not existing, it should have been Bernie Sanders. But again, Bernie doesn't play those sort of games, so Bernie Sanders is going to wait and comment when we have the full information. So Pete Buttigieg, we knew what he was trying to do. Buttigieg understands that Iowa matters so much, and especially for a candidate like Buttigieg, who has very little minority support, winning the overwhelmingly white Iowa might have been his only path to victory. And Buttigieg also understands that when Iowa is a close result and it doesn't come out for a couple days who actually won, the bump that Iowa gives might not actually play as big a role in the primary process as it does when there's a decisive winner. Rick Santorum, for instance, in 2012, I believe, actually won Iowa, but it was only after a recount. And by the time that happened, Mitt Romney already got the Iowa bump because it was assumed that he actually won Iowa, even though he didn't. But because on the night, Romney was able to go out and say, hey everybody, I'm the Iowa winner, Romney got that bump. And that's what Buttigieg was trying to do last night. He was trying to steal that, even though it's not fully clear who won, Sanders or Buttigieg. And again, if there is any data leanings, it's towards Bernie, not Pete. But I'll tell you one thing. This is not going to slow down Bernie Sanders and his supporters. Bernie Sanders, I believe, is going to emerge the victor in Iowa. And while the media is going to try and say that it doesn't really matter as much because we didn't get a result the night of, or that the results don't matter because they're questionable and they're shrouded in controversy, when Bernie Sanders emerges victorious, we're going to celebrate that. We're going to highlight that. We're not going to let people forget it. And Bernie Sanders is going to go into New Hampshire, where he polls even better than he did in Iowa, and he's going to win New Hampshire. And you're going to see, as I noted yesterday, the media try to ignore the fact that every time since 1976 in modern primary history among the Democratic Party, that when you win both Iowa and New Hampshire, you go on to win the nomination. That is a historical consistency in modern Democratic Party history. They're going to try to deny that significance if it benefits Bernie Sanders. And they would do that anyway, but they're going to do it extra hard now because of Iowa and the debacle there. We can't let Pete Buttigieg or an app or the DNC steal the narrative victory that I feel Bernie Sanders earned. Stay vigilant, stay on this, and when Bernie is declared the winner, because again, that's my belief. I don't have any results, but unlike Pete Buttigieg, I don't pretend to. But when I feel Bernie is declared the winner, let's all celebrate and let's all ensure that every single last voter knows that and knows that when Bernie goes 2 for 2, he's made history yet again.